The imaginary component of the wave equation, psi, is dark matter energy, and that is a fact. You are now orbiting in sonic gravity, and you will see the universe through the eyes of a madman. You've only barely glimpsed the sonic gravity theory of everything, but when you orbit in sonic gravity, you will see the universe for what it truly is in the madness, and that too is a fact. And so at the outset, I want to express heartfelt gratitude. Thank you for orbiting in sonic gravity and deciding to spend any amount of time listening to the sonic gravity theory of everything. But I want to point out that in order to really hear and assess theory of everything, it really becomes necessary to abandon the instinct to reject that which we don't agree with or understand differently right when we hear it. Because in order to assess a theory of everything, you really need to kind of just hear it and then ask yourself whether it predicts things that are measurable. Does it yield predictions and outcomes, and does it make sense of the things that we know we see around us? And so at some point, you might hear the sonic gravity theory of everything discuss something like the inversatility of mass and velocity. Because it's the sonic gravity theory of everything that mass varies inversely with velocity, which is why photons are massless, it's why cosmic rays are almost massless, and it's why particles that are accelerated to almost the speed of light appear massless and small, and then on impact, when the velocity drops to way less than the speed of light, all of a sudden they get fat, they get heavy and big. And then when the environment, when an electron gets picked up by a positive ion somewhere and it starts to spin up, it accelerates, it loses some mass. And I know that the scientific consensus is that the particle decays from being a muon into an electron again, and in the process ejects a bunch of antineutrinos. It's the sonic gravity theory of everything that it's just merely accelerating in an orbital vector and losing mass because observable mass comes off the hologram and turns some of that energy into imaginary off the hologram energy, essentially drops some of its mass into a dark matter state to pay for the velocity that maintains conservation of mass energy on the hologram. Because in the sonic gravity theory of everything, we exist in a holographic universe. Our consciousness runs over the surface of a 2D holographic universe, the surface of a black hole. Now, the holographic universe, in my idea, that's Jacob Bekenstein, Gerard Hoof, Leonard Susskind, Stephen Hawking, is their idea. And the sonic gravity theory of everything was really created by cobbling together all the things that I think we really know in physics and seeing how they fit together and trying to put them together. And so the sonic gravity theory of everything is that our consciousness sits on the 2D holographic surface of a black hole, encoding a universe inside. And the only place that our consciousness gets its information from is what's in contact with the hologram. Just like our brain doesn't actually interact with the environment. Our brain doesn't see anything, our brain doesn't hear anything, doesn't taste or smell anything, and it shouldn't touch anything. The brain just interprets electrical signals from our nerves. And so in the same way, our consciousness could be receiving energy from the hologram. And that energy is what we interpret as the universe around us. Now, it sounds like a lot, and if you just say, oh no, that can't be it, you're not going to give it a chance. And if we reject it at the outset, then no theory of everything will ever pass muster, because nobody already believes a theory of everything. So when I say that it's the sonic gravity theory of everything, that our consciousness exists on the 2D holographic surface of a black hole, with space-time blowing out of the black hole from the future to the past, and it's when space-time blows through the surface of the black hole, using the energy on the surface of the black hole to change the hologram. That's what we notice as the passage of time. And SU1 symmetry is the matter and energy oscillating in a circle around the planar holographic surface of the black hole. And when the matter goes forward in time through the surface of the black hole, it's matter, and when it comes back around and goes back through on the backswing into the past, and then comes back around, That's actually loop quantum gravity. It's matter and antimatter. It's why particles are quantumly entangled. When you separate a particle, it's actually oscillating through the surface of the hologram in two different places. And so anytime you observe it going back in time with a certain spin, a certain direction, a certain velocity, it's going to have an antimatter identity somewhere else on the hologram, wherever it comes back through the other side. It explains everything in quantum entanglement, quantum tunneling, quantum teleportation, whatever you want to call it. And SU1 symmetry is that orbital direction, that orbital path through the hologram in two places. The SU2 symmetry, that's quantum gravity. That's the tension in the string, in the Higgs string, that's leashing all the matter and energy to the surface of Planck time. And so tension in that string, tension in the Higgs field, tension in the Higgs string is quantum gravity. And you can imagine the plane of our hologram straight up and down on the y-axis. And the x-axis is time into the future and into the past. And the tension in the Higgs string from all that matter oscillating around is going to bend space-time. It's going to essentially bend that axis as it's pulling. So that's how energy oscillating through the surface of our black hole bends space-time. That's gravity. And the stronger the stress, the stronger the stretch and tension in the Higgs string, the greater the gravity is, which is a greater deflection in the surface of space-time, which is exactly what general relativity is. So there's a geometric unity between the wave equation as we understand SU1, SU2 symmetry and the surface of the black hole, which is what Einstein was paying attention to. That is unification. And space-time blowing out of the black hole from the future to the past is actually space-time blasting out of black holes, which explains universal expansion. Because if every black hole is ejecting space-time, those black holes are blowing other black holes further apart. And space-time is moving through matter. So you don't see matter expanding with that space so much, but you see the distance between galaxies and between galaxy clusters getting greater and greater and greater. And you see the rate at which the expansion happens goes faster the further you look out, because there's more black holes between where we are and where we're looking, the further we look out. And so that's universal expansion. It's really easy. Once you have the sonic gravity theory of everything in the Rosetta Stone of the universe. That is a fact. And I know I just threw a lot at you. I haven't shown you the math yet. It's coming. But I just want you to realize that if our consciousness is surfing on the surface of this 2D hologram, recording information in our memories and in our DNA, then that makes us the universe's mechanism for the law of conservation of information. And we're recording information about the universe inside the hologram, memories and DNA. And when we die, we leave the surface of the black hole as Hawking radiation. And we carry with us our information in fractal ascension, possibly to the black hole that contains our universe, that contains our black hole. And who knows what then? Do we manifest on the surface of that black hole? Does our consciousness re-manifest inside that black hole in that universe? What's that look like? Is that reincarnation? Do we go to the primordial black hole? Is that heaven? Hard to say. Hard to say, but if our consciousness is energy on the surface of the black hole, and Hawking proved that Hawking radiation carries quantum information away from a black hole, and all current, past, and future Hawking radiation is quantumly entangled, and if our energy, our consciousness, our spirit, soul, vibe, if our DNA is that quantum entanglement from our ancestors and our progeny, then who knows? Maybe our consciousness is on the surface of this black hole. And maybe when we die, we carry that information in our memory and our DNA somewhere else. And if we stuck to the surface of this black hole, who's to say we don't stick to the surface of the next one, or the next one, or the next one? So weirdly, it kind of makes room for the scientific plausibility of life after death, heaven and hell. Who knows? And if we're using the energy on the surface of the black hole to run our brains, our consciousness, and space-time is competing for the same energy to change the hologram, maybe that explains why we get tired. Maybe when we constipate the flow of time, when we're conscious, we slow the flow of time with our consciousness, which is why 6 hours in a traffic jam feels a lot different than 6 hours when we're asleep, when we're unconscious, when we're not taking energy off the hologram. And when we wake up, time's passed much faster. Maybe that explains why, if humans have a 53 million neuron per gram brain and hummingbirds have a 650 million neuron per gram brain. Maybe the conscious hummingbird isn't fast because it has fast muscles. Maybe it's fast because it chokes the hologram. It constipates the flow of time, so its time moves much slower. Because the heart of a conscious hummingbird beats 20 times a second when it's awake. When it's awake, not when it's flying, when it's awake. And 1 time a second when it's asleep, when it's unconscious. And that is a fact. Anyway, thanks for listening. Give it a chance. I think it'll surprise you. Maybe. Probably. I'm pretty sure.